The private jet terminal radiated quiet opulence. Polished marble floors gleamed beneath soft lighting. Outside on the tarmac, engines murmured in the distance. Inside, high-net-worth travelers strolled with effortless confidence. Suited executives checking watches, elegant couples trailing designer luggage, assistants murmuring in Bluetooth headsets. And then she walked in. Danielle Mercer, 38 years old, CEO, self-made, respected across industries, yet constantly underestimated. She didn't need glitter to shine. Her presence, refined, calm, unmistakably in command, turned heads. She wore a sleek black blazer over wide-leg cream trousers. Her hair, a rich cascade of curls, framed a face that carried both warmth and quiet intensity. In one hand, she held a tablet. In the other, a slim leather carry-on. She stepped to the counter. The check-in agent, a young woman with perfect posture and an even more polished smile, looked up immediately. "Good morning, ma'am. May I assist you?" Danielle's voice was calm but clipped. "I'm here for the Mercer flight to Zurich." The agent typed quickly, eyes scanning her screen. "Yes, everything's in order. Your jet's on standby, and the captain will meet you shortly." Danielle nodded once, then stepped aside. Her gaze moved over the terminal, but her mind was already on the hours ahead. Zurich meant contracts, negotiations, legacy-level expansion. A historic partnership was within reach, something she'd built toward for years, and she had no intention of letting anything, or anyone, get in her way. Footsteps approached. She turned. A tall man in a sharply pressed pilot uniform was heading her way, shoulders squared, jaw tight. His posture was professional. His expression wasn't. Captain Raymond Keene. Danielle recognized the subtle signs. She'd seen them before, dozens of times. He looked past her for a moment, as though expecting someone else. When his gaze returned to her, it didn't soften. "Miss Mercer?" he asked, extending a hand. Danielle returned the gesture. Her handshake was firm, controlled. "Captain Keene, I presume?" His hand lingered half a second too long. Not in familiarity, just control. His tone was polite. His eyes weren't. "That's me. I'll be flying your jet today." Danielle caught it immediately. The faint narrowing of his gaze, the slight upward curl of his lips, the way his eyes traveled over her, not with admiration, but confusion. Maybe even disbelief. She didn't flinch. "Everything in order for departure?" Captain Keene hesitated. His glance flicked to the check-in clerk as though to confirm her claim. Yes. Just final checks. Though I'll admit, we don't often see private clients like yourself." He let the sentence hang, as if waiting to see how she'd respond. Danielle's eyebrows lifted, but her voice stayed even. "Private clients like me?" He gave a casual shrug, the smirk returning. "No offense, of course. It's just that owners in this space usually come from a particular kind of background." Danielle tilted her head slightly, reading every movement of his face. "And what background is that?" He chuckled awkwardly. "Didn't mean anything by it. It's just, well, this isn't the usual demographic, you know?" The silence thickened. The check-in agent's smile faltered. Danielle didn't blink. "I see. So you've already concluded what kind of person I am. Based on what? My skin? My age? Or the fact that I didn't walk in trailing assistants?" Captain Keene's posture stiffened. "I didn't mean anything by it." She cut him off. "I didn't ask what you meant. I asked what you based your assumption on." He looked down for a moment, jaw clenched, clearly regretting having said anything at all. Or maybe just regretting that she called him out. She let it hang there. "Captain, let's be absolutely clear. I'm not a guest. I'm not a client. I'm the sole owner of that aircraft. It has my name on every document, every maintenance record, every fuel contract. I own the plane. I fund the crew. And if there's any issue with that, I suggest you make it plain right now." His smirk vanished. "No issue, ma'am," he said. But the way he said it still reeked of resentment. "Good," Danielle replied, "because I expect this flight to proceed without delay, and I expect the utmost professionalism from everyone on board, including you." The words didn't rise above a conversational tone, but they landed like steel. Raymond gave a clipped nod and turned away. Danielle exhaled slowly, though not from nerves. She'd been here before. Not this terminal, not this jet, but this moment, the one where someone's prejudice was wrapped so tightly in civility they expected her not to notice. She noticed. She always did. She moved toward the private lounge, heels tapping softly on the marble, her focus already pulling back toward Zurich and what waited there. The lounge smelled of leather and fresh espresso. Cream-colored armchairs lined the space. Ambient lighting created a hush of exclusivity, meant to soothe nerves and signal importance. Danielle took a seat by the window, her bag by her side. Her tablet lit up with a touch. Final slide deck, talking points, market projections. The Zurich meeting wasn't just business. It was future-defining. But her thoughts wandered back to the captain. Raymond Keene had given her the same expression she'd seen in boardrooms, restaurants, even at luxury car dealerships. That subtle disbelief, that patronizing smile that pretended to be polite. A soft voice interrupted her focus. "Miss Mercer?" She looked up. The young woman from the counter, her name tag read Aaron, stood nearby, hands clasped nervously. "Can I offer you anything while you wait? Coffee? Tea? Something cold?" Danielle softened. "Coffee would be lovely." "Thank you, Aaron." The woman smiled and then turned. Danielle paused. "Aaron?" She turned back. "Yes, ma'am." Danielle's tone stayed gentle. "If anyone ever tries to make you feel like you don't belong, you look them in the eye and remind them they're mistaken." Aaron blinked, surprised, then nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." "I will." Danielle gave her a small smile. The words hung between them, meaningful in a way both understood. Outside the window, her jet gleamed in the sun. Sleek, silver, powerful. A flying monument to the years of sacrifice, sweat, and solitude that had brought her here. Her company, her vision had risen from nothing. She had taken every setback and every dismissal and turned them into fuel. And still, people like Captain Keene couldn't imagine she owned what she did. Danielle's phone vibrated beside her tablet. Leonard Mateo. She answered without hesitation. "You're calling about Zurich." "Always," Leonard said, voice full of warmth and just a hint of mischief. "Just checking that our queen of acquisitions is wheels up soon." "Almost," Danielle replied, "though I've hit a small obstacle." Leonard's tone shifted. "What kind of obstacle?" She kept her eyes on the tarmac. "Let's just say the captain wasn't expecting someone like me to own the jet he's flying." Leonard exhaled audibly. "Want me to handle it?" "No," she said quickly. "I've got this. But stay close. If it escalates, I may need backup." "You always do," Leonard said. "But I've got your back regardless." "I know," she replied. After the call ended, Danielle returned to her seat and stared out at her jet again. She wouldn't let this derail her. Not today, not ever. And especially not by a man who couldn't see past his own assumptions. Side note, likes help this reach more people? Comments keep the convo going, and shares? That's how this message spreads. The coffee came in a bone-white porcelain cup, resting on a small silver tray alongside 2 sugar cubes and a folded linen napkin. Erin placed it gently on the table beside Danielle, without a word, but her hands trembled ever so slightly. "Thank you," Danielle said, her voice soft but steady. Erin nodded and turned to leave, but Danielle stopped her with a glance. "Erin," she said again, and the young woman turned back. "Yes, ma'am? You handled yourself well out there. Don't let anyone shake that." Erin's lips parted in surprise, but then her eyes warmed. "Thank you, Miss Mercer. I appreciate that." Danielle gave her a nod and watched as she walked away, a little taller than before. The lounge around her was calm, designed for comfort and status. Neutral colors, wide seats, the occasional whisper of ice clinking into a glass from the private bar. But beneath its surface was a tension that Danielle couldn't quite ignore. Not because anyone was openly watching her, but because she'd spent a lifetime knowing when the room shifted. And it had. Subtle, but real. She leaned back in her seat and picked up her tablet again. Numbers glowed across the screen. International forecasts, competitive positioning, luxury market insights. Zurich was more than a business trip. It was a legacy move. Her company, Mercer and Company, had grown from a modest online boutique into a transatlantic player. This meeting would finalize a distribution deal across 5 European cities, but Captain Keen's expression still sat in the back of her mind like a splinter. Danielle had dealt with his type before. They never announced themselves as bigots. They didn't shout or sneer. They came dressed in protocol and tone. They spoke in implication. They clung to assumptions, often without even realizing it. The hardest part was never their ignorance. It was the certainty behind it. Her phone buzzed on the table, vibrating softly against the oak. It was a message from Leonard. "Everything okay? Want me to step in?" Danielle smiled faintly. His loyalty never wavered. "Handled it. But stay close, just in case." She placed the phone back down and took a slow sip of coffee. It had just the right warmth and bitterness to steady her nerves. Across the room near the kitchenette, Erin hovered briefly. She wasn't pretending to clean or reorganize. She was watching. Danielle met her eyes for a moment, then returned her attention to her tablet. Sometimes presence was its own form of power. The lounge stayed quiet for several more minutes. Occasionally someone entered. An older couple with matching luggage, a young executive tapping urgently on a phone, but no one disturbed her. Then movement caught her attention near the far window. Captain Keen was back. He wasn't looking at her. He was standing with another crew member, a younger man probably in his 20s. Slim build, khakis beneath a navy jacket, eyes that darted nervously between the captain and the terminal. Danielle watched as the two spoke in hushed tones. Keen gestured toward the jet, then toward the lounge. The younger man's eyebrows lifted, a flicker of concern crossing his face. Keen's tone sharpened. The younger man shifted uncomfortably, nodding, but his expression betrayed hesitation. Danielle's stomach clenched, not from fear but recognition. He wasn't letting it go. She watched as the two men separated. The younger crew member walked away, head down, while Keen stood still, arms crossed, gaze fixed out the window. Danielle looked down at her tablet. She wasn't going to wait to see how far this would go. She opened her email. To michael.connors@eliteaviation.com. Subject, incident on Mercer, Flight 407. She began typing. Precise, clear, no emotional flourishes, just facts. She detailed the pilot's behavior, his language, the implication in his tone, and the clear discomfort it caused not only her, but also the staff present. She didn't accuse recklessly. She reported deliberately. By the time she finished the draft, she had reviewed it twice. She hit send. Then she set the tablet down and folded her hands in her lap. She wasn't shaken. She was resolved. Danielle Mercer had built her empire by never walking away from the uncomfortable moment. She met it head-on every time. And now she waited, not for revenge, but for accountability. Moments later, Erin reappeared near the kitchenette, wiping down an already spotless countertop. Her movements were careful, her gaze shifting between Danielle and the hallway leading to the jet. Danielle stood. Their eyes met again. "Everything okay?" Erin asked, the words coming out with more weight than casual curiosity. Danielle gave a small nod. "It will be." As she moved back toward her seat, her mind circled the conversation she'd had earlier with Leonard. The irony of it all was never lost on her. To outsiders, she had everything. A company that bore her name, a private jet, international deals. But with every milestone came a new form of resistance. Not louder, just more subtle. The higher she climbed, the more people looked for ways to clip her wings. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Leonard. "Still good?" Danielle tapped back quickly. Still standing. Outside, the jet's engines whirred to life. The crew was preparing for takeoff. But inside the terminal, the real turbulence had already begun. She took a long breath and looked out across the tarmac. The aircraft's gleaming silver body reflected the sunlight like a mirror. It was hers, paid for, maintained, staffed, registered, and no one, not a captain, not a stranger, not a gatekeeper, would take that away. Not today, not ever. The soft quiet of the lounge broke like glass. Voices, low, tense, carried from the far side of the terminal. Danielle lifted her gaze just as Captain Keen reappeared, his stride quick, jaw tight, speaking in clipped tones to another crew member trailing behind him. Their body language wasn't subtle. The younger man looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot, nodding hesitantly as Keen gestured toward the jet and then toward the lounge. Danielle closed her tablet, set it down with quiet precision, and stood. Time to meet this head-on. Her heels struck the marble with purpose as she crossed the lounge, each step deliberate. The tension in the air thickened with every foot of ground she closed. Keen turned when he heard her coming. His expression hardened. Whatever conversation he'd been having died instantly on his lips. "Miss Mercer," he said, tone sharp but forced. "I was just finalizing." Danielle stopped 3 feet in front of him, calm, centered. "And do these final preparations include questioning my ownership of the aircraft again?" The younger crew member glanced away, suddenly engrossed in the wall. Keen straightened. "I don't know what you mean." Danielle's eyes narrowed slightly. "You do. Captain, let me remind you, once again, that I am the sole owner of this aircraft. I provided the documentation. I'm present. I'm authorized. I don't owe you further proof. But what I do require is basic professionalism." Keen's lips tightened into a line. "With all due respect, Miss Mercer, I'm just doing my job. There are protocols, verifications. I need to ensure the safety of every flight I command. If something feels off, it's my responsibility to investigate." Danielle crossed her arms. "And what exactly felt off?" Keen hesitated. "Your attitude? Her presence? Her skin?" Danielle's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "The issue here isn't safety, it's perception. Yours, because someone like me doesn't fit your idea of a jet owner. And instead of adjusting your assumption, you chose to challenge my presence." The crew member next to him flinched slightly, clearly wishing he could vanish. Keen pressed on, doubling down. "I don't appreciate being accused of things I haven't done. I treat all my clients the same." Danielle gave a dry, quiet laugh. "Do you? Because I've taken more flights than I can count, and I know the difference between caution and condescension. I've seen how professionalism looks. And Captain, this isn't it." Around them, the lounge had fallen nearly silent. Conversations paused. The tension had become a spectacle now, unwillingly witnessed by others who couldn't help but notice. Keen glanced around. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "I've simply followed procedure," he muttered. Danielle took a step closer. She wasn't loud. She wasn't angry. But her presence filled every inch of space. "Let me be absolutely clear. I worked for years to earn what I have. I didn't inherit this aircraft. I didn't marry into it. I built a company from the ground up. I sat in too many rooms where people spoke over me, ignored me, doubted me, and I still made it here." Her voice dropped even lower, steady as a metronome. "So I will not let a man who can't see past his bias decide where I belong. You don't get to write me out of my own story. Not today, not ever." Keen swallowed hard. His mouth opened, then closed again. Behind him, the younger crew member looked down, guilt flickering across his face. Danielle leaned in slightly, her voice still quiet but now edged with steel. "I've already contacted your employer. The CEO, in fact. A formal complaint has been submitted. So if you're hoping this moment can be brushed aside, I'd rethink that. Right now, you have a choice to make. Either act like the pilot you were trained to be, or step aside and let someone else do the job." Keen's face flushed red, but it wasn't anger anymore. It was exposure. Danielle took a step back and waited. He gave a slow, shallow nod. "Understood." She studied him for a moment longer, then turned and walked back to the seating area. She didn't need to see the other passengers watching her. She could feel it, not as judgment, but recognition. Something real had just happened, and people were taking note. Aaron stood near the edge of the lounge, visibly tense, lips pressed into a line. She glanced toward Danielle as she passed, then lowered her gaze again. Danielle sat back down, picking up her coffee, now lukewarm, and took a sip anyway. She didn't relax. Not quite. There was a difference between ending a confrontation and ending the problem. Her phone vibrated. "Leonard." Still want me to step in? Danielle responded immediately. Handled, but stay close. Might not be over. From her seat, she glanced toward the window. The jet still waited, sunlight glinting off its fuselage. Her jet, her future, and she wasn't done defending it yet. Back in her seat, Danielle stared at her tablet screen without seeing it, the charts and projections blurred behind the fog of tension still lingering in her mind. She'd kept her composure, said what needed to be said, made her position undeniable. But that didn't mean the battle was over. With men like Raymond Keene, it rarely ended at the first confrontation. She took another sip of her coffee. Cold, bitter. She set it down and reached for her phone again, this time to check for a response from Elite Aviation's CEO. Nothing yet, but it was coming. She turned her attention to the window, watching the tarmac where her jet waited, an emblem of everything she'd fought for. It was more than transportation. It was a statement. It said she belonged at the table, and in the sky. Across the lounge, Erin stood at the kitchenette, her hands absently wiping the already clean counter. But her eyes were elsewhere, subtly watching the exchange that had unfolded minutes earlier, tracking every word, every shift in body language. She wasn't just an observer, she was learning. Danielle didn't realize it then, but her poise had already left a mark. In the hallway just beyond the lounge entrance, muffled voices rose again. She heard Keene's voice, tight, agitated. Then another one, younger, quieter, hesitant. Danielle turned her head slightly, listening without appearing to listen. She caught fragments. I just don't get it, Ray. She's got all the paperwork. It checks out. And honestly, she's legit. The younger voice belonged to the same crew member who had stood awkwardly behind Keene earlier. But Keene didn't soften. That doesn't mean anything, he snapped. You think people don't forge documents? You think someone like her just owns a jet like this? The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Danielle's jaw clenched. Not out of surprise, but frustration. The same old tune, different lyrics. The younger man spoke again, quieter now. Leonard Mateo vouched for her. That's not someone you second guess. Keene scoffed. I don't care who's backing her. I've flown for billionaires, royalty, Fortune 100 execs. They don't look like that. She doesn't fit the profile, and until I get answers, I'm not signing off on anything. Danielle didn't need to hear more. She picked up her phone and typed a quick note. Not to Leonard this time, but to herself. Documentation, direct quotes, time-stamped. If things escalated again, there would be a record. She glanced toward Erin. The young woman was standing still now, hands clasped, her face a careful mask. But her posture gave her away. She had heard it too. Danielle gave her a small nod of acknowledgement. Erin nodded back. A bond unspoken, recognized and felt. Danielle returned to her seat and took a breath. One, then another. This wasn't about rudeness. It wasn't about questioning a flight plan. It was about something deeper, more insidious. The kind of quiet sabotage that didn't show up in incident reports but could derail opportunities in an instant. She pulled up her inbox and saw the reply she'd been waiting for. Subject: Incident on Mercer Flight 407 from Michael Connors, CEO, Elite Aviation Services. Dear Miss Mercer, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take your concerns extremely seriously. I will be launching a formal investigation into Captain Keene's conduct. Your account of the events is clear, and I appreciate your professionalism in handling the situation. Please don't hesitate to contact me directly if the issue continues. Your comfort and safety are our top priorities. Sincerely, Michael Connors. Danielle stared at the screen for a moment, lips pressed into a thin line. Words were good. Action was better. She forwarded the email to Leonard with a short message. The clock has started. Then she placed the tablet in her bag and stood once more. No more sitting back. Just as she crossed toward the lounge entrance, Keene reappeared. His face was drawn, movements brisk, eyes flickering with that same frustrated energy she'd seen earlier. Only now, it simmered closer to boiling. He stopped when he saw her standing in front of him. Miss Mercer, he said, tone flat. I've spoken with my crew again. Your documentation seems to be in order, but I still have concerns. Danielle raised her hand, cutting him off. Captain, stop. He blinked. We've already discussed this. You've voiced your assumptions. You've questioned my legitimacy. And I've given you every opportunity to correct course. But you didn't take it. Now you're standing in front of me again, trying to mask the same insult in new language. He tried to speak again. She didn't let him. This is no longer a misunderstanding. It's a pattern, and I won't waste another second entertaining it. Keen's face reddened. But for once, he didn't interrupt. Danielle continued. Let me remind you, once again, your job is to pilot this aircraft, not to act as a gatekeeper for wealth, for success, or for status. He opened his mouth, closed it. Her voice was calm, but there was something in it now. Weight, finality. If you cannot accept that I earned every part of this, if you cannot respect me as your client and the owner of this plane, then I will have you replaced immediately, and your behavior will be fully documented and escalated. Keen didn't respond. For the first time, he understood that the situation had slipped beyond his control. Danielle let the silence hang between them. Then she stepped back. Do you understand me? Keen looked down, jaw flexing. Yes, ma'am. Good. Danielle turned without another word and returned to her seat. Behind her, Keen remained frozen, his entire career suddenly balanced on a razor's edge. Danielle didn't gloat. She didn't relax. She simply sat and pulled her focus back toward Zurich, toward the deal that waited, the future that beckoned. But she felt the weight of it all, the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from having to fight for legitimacy that should have never been in question. Erin appeared again at her side, her voice low. Miss Mercer? Danielle looked up. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for what happened. You didn't deserve that. Danielle's expression softened. Thank you, Erin, but don't apologize for someone else's ignorance. She paused and then added, just promise me one thing. Erin nodded. Anything. Never let someone else's prejudice define you. You're worth more than that. Erin swallowed hard, her eyes shining slightly. I promise. Danielle smiled gently and watched her walk away. And in that moment, the tension in her chest loosened, just a little. The lounge had returned to its quiet rhythm. The murmur of distant conversations, the soft clinking of cutlery from the bar, the occasional shuffle of a newspaper. On the surface, everything was normal. But Danielle could feel the eyes. Not staring, not gawking, just watching. Curious, respectful, maybe even a little inspired. She didn't need the attention. She didn't want it. But she knew what that confrontation had meant to people who had never seen someone like her, calm, composed, unshakable, take the reins so unapologetically. Across the room, Erin hovered just beyond view, pretending to straighten a shelf that needed no straightening. Her posture was lighter now, straight, as if she were standing not just taller, but freer. Danielle sat in the same seat, legs crossed, hands steady as she pulled her tablet back out. She tapped through a few slides. She'd reviewed these numbers 100 times. She could recite them in her sleep. Still, repetition helped recenter her. Zurich was waiting. Her future was waiting. She refused to let a man like Keen stall her progress any more than he already had. Outside the panoramic windows, her aircraft gleamed, engines humming softly as the crew moved in preparation. The sky was clean and blue, the kind of day pilots dream about. She glanced toward the gate corridor. No sign of Keen. Not yet. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Leonard. You still good? Or do I need to make a call? Danielle tapped back a reply. Still in control. But stay close. She paused. Also, CEO responded. Investigation started. Leonard replied immediately. Let me know if you want it escalated. She smiled faintly. Already working on it. Then, as if summoned by tension itself, she saw him. Captain Keen stepped into the lounge again, flanked by the same younger crew member, who now looked more reluctant than ever. Keen's stride was stiffer, his face a mask, calculated neutrality over a core of frustration. Danielle sat up straighter, one arm resting on the table, her phone still in her hand. He approached her seat without invitation. Miss Mercer, he began, his voice flatter than before. I've spoken with my crew. While your documentation appears legitimate, I still have lingering concerns that Danielle didn't give him a chance to finish. Stop. He blinked. We've had this conversation already, she said, her tone calm but heavy with finality. You've cast doubt. You've questioned my identity, my authority, my presence, all without cause. You're not concerned with protocol. You're concerned with control. Keene tried again. Ma'am, she cut in, sharper now. Number. You don't get to play the victim here. You don't get to hide behind policies you've selectively applied. You decided from the moment I stepped through that door that I didn't belong. And instead of adjusting your bias, you doubled down. The younger crew member looked down again, his shoes suddenly fascinating. Danielle rose slowly to her feet. Let me be perfectly clear, Captain. This jet is mine. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, legally, financially, authentically. I earned it, I paid for it, I maintain it, and I choose who flies it. Keene's jaw clenched, but he remained quiet. Danielle took a step closer, voice dropping lower. So this is your last chance to course correct. Because if you continue down this path, you won't just lose this flight, you'll lose your position. She paused, letting the words land. And you'll have no one to blame but yourself. Keene's eyes met hers. For a long second, silence stretched between them. Then finally he nodded. Understood. Danielle held his gaze a beat longer, then turned back to her seat without waiting for a response. Behind her, Keene stood stiffly before turning and walking away, the younger crew member trailing behind. Aaron appeared at Danielle's side a few seconds later. Miss Mercer? Danielle looked up. Yes? Just wanted to let you know, we got the final fuel check and clearance. Your jet's ready when you are. Danielle nodded. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you for everything else today. You've handled yourself with real grace. Aaron gave a small smile. I learned it from watching you. Danielle exhaled slowly. The compliment wasn't flashy, but it landed. She picked up her tablet and phone and stood again. It was almost time. Before heading toward the gate, she pulled out her phone one last time and opened her draft folder. There was one more message to send. This one was longer, an official written report to accompany the earlier complaint. It included timestamps, direct quotes, a description of Keene's behavior, his second attempt to undermine her authority, and the statements he'd made to his crew. She attached it all to her email to Michael Connors at Elite Aviation. Then she hit send. This wasn't about punishment, it was about precedent. Keene had used his position to try and gatekeep a space he didn't own. Danielle had walked into that space, claimed it, and now she was sealing the door behind her, for others to walk through more easily. She stepped toward the gate, where a terminal attendant waited. Miss Mercer, the attendant said, clearly nervous but polite. Your aircraft is ready for boarding. If you'd like, I can escort you. Danielle nodded. Let's go. She walked beside the attendant toward the stairs leading to her jet. The wind carried the low whir of turbines, the scent of jet fuel, and the quiet certainty of control. Captain Keene waited at the base of the stairs. His posture was rigid, his face unreadable. Danielle stopped beside him. Captain, are we clear to proceed? Keene nodded. We are. Danielle didn't smile. She didn't scold. She simply gestured toward the door. After you. Keene hesitated for just a second, then turned and ascended the stairs, his movements mechanical. Danielle followed. Inside the cabin, the air was cool, calm, impeccably designed. White leather seating, wood panel accents, soundproof serenity. She moved toward her seat as the captain disappeared into the cockpit without another word. Danielle sat, buckled in, and looked out the window. Zurich still waited, and so did Justice. The jet glided down the runway, its engines humming with quiet confidence. Inside the cabin, Danielle exhaled slowly as the wheels lifted off the ground. She watched the tarmac fall away through the oval window, the city shrinking beneath a curtain of clouds. She didn't smile. Not yet, but the heaviness in her chest eased slightly with every foot of altitude. The pilot hadn't said another word since she boarded. No update, no greeting, just silence. Fine by her. At this point, professionalism was all she needed. The jet leveled out, smooth and steady. Altitude, 38,000 feet, airspeed just under 500 miles per hour. She could recite these numbers without looking. She'd flown often enough, and yet this flight, this moment, felt different. It wasn't the luxury, it wasn't the destination, it was what she'd had to push through to get here. Danielle leaned back into her seat, leather creaking gently beneath her. The interior was pristine, soft lighting overhead, brushed silver fixtures, a quiet hum beneath it all. But her mind wasn't on design or comfort, it was on the email. She opened her inbox again, refreshing, and there it was. Subject, formal report, Mercer Flight 407, from Michael Connors, CEO, Elite Aviation. Daniel, I've read your detailed report. First, let me thank you for your professionalism and clarity. What you described is unacceptable. Captain Keene will be suspended pending a formal review immediately upon landing in Zurich. This is not a matter we take lightly. We will also be conducting an internal audit of our diversity and sensitivity protocols. If it's all right with you, I would like to personally debrief with you after your return. Thank you again for bringing this to our attention. Your experience will not go unanswered. Michael Connors. Danielle read it twice, then once more. The words were measured, corporate, but behind them was something real: weight, intention. She forwarded the email to Leonard with a short message. Keene's days are numbered. His reply was instant. Knew you'd handle it. I'm proud of you. Want me to make a few more calls? Not yet, she typed back. Let's give them a chance to do the right thing. She placed the phone aside and picked up the water glass on the table next to her seat. Cool, crisp, a small but meaningful comfort. Just then, the flight attendant stepped into view. He was young, maybe mid-20s, neatly dressed in the standard Navy uniform, posture respectful but visibly tense. Miss Mercer? Danielle turned to him. Yes? Would you like anything to drink or eat while we're cruising? We have charcuterie, sandwiches, fresh fruit. Water's fine for now, thank you. The attendant nodded and turned, but she stopped him. Wait, what's your name? He blinked. Marcus, ma'am. Thank you, Marcus, for your professionalism. He hesitated, then nodded again. His eyes softened slightly. Thank you, ma'am. As he disappeared into the galley, Danielle felt something shift. A small gesture, but it mattered. She glanced toward the cockpit. Door closed. Keene locked in with his silence. Good. Let him stew. Let him reflect. She returned to her tablet, scrolling through the presentation she'd prepared for Zurich. The pitch was tight, the numbers clean, the impact global. This deal would push Mercer and Company into a whole new orbit. 5 luxury retailers, 2 international partners, and exclusive access to a high-growth market segment that most companies like hers never even got near. But what stayed with her now wasn't the pitch deck. It was what she'd endured to get to the plane, and how many people never made it that far. Her gaze drifted to the window again. The sky stretched endlessly in every direction, soft clouds below like fields of snow. The view looked peaceful, but Danielle knew better. The climb always came with pressure. She thought back to the first time she'd boarded a private jet. It had been on loan from an investor. She'd been 29, unsure of how to act, what to say, who she was expected to be. That first flight had felt like a test. This one felt like a statement. She was no longer trying to fit in. She was owning the air she flew through. Her phone buzzed again. Leonard. Call when you land. I want to hear all of it, she typed back. You'll get the full download. Just prep the Zurich team. It's going to be a strong landing. Another ding. This time, a notification from her assistant. The Zurich venue was ready. Press kits delivered. VIP invites confirmed. Everything was in motion. Still, Danielle stayed alert. She didn't allow herself full relaxation. Not yet. She knew people like Keene, knew how some men recoiled when challenged by a woman who wouldn't shrink, especially one who looked like her. She knew the silence in the cockpit wasn't acceptance, it was calculation, but she'd already built the armor. She leaned back and let herself take one deep breath, then another. Marcus reappeared with a fresh glass of water and a quiet smile. Here you go, ma'am. Let me know if you need anything else. Danielle accepted it. Thank you, Marcus. Really? He nodded again, then hesitated. If you don't mind me saying, the way you handled that earlier, I just wanted to say it meant a lot. She looked at him, genuinely touched. That means a lot to me, too. You carry yourself with respect. Don't let anyone shake that. He nodded once, then stepped away, his shoulders squared a little more than before. Small shifts, quiet victories, the kind that built momentum. Inside the cockpit, Captain Keene sat stiffly at the controls, hands too tight on the yoke. His co-pilot said nothing, focused on the readouts. Then a ping from the comm system. Incoming message, Elite Aviation Headquarters. Keene reached for the intercom. Captain Keene, this is Michael Connors. We've received a formal report regarding your conduct. You are ordered to report for an immediate review upon landing in Zurich. Until then, you are to maintain full protocol and avoid all contact with the client beyond essential updates. Do you understand? Keene's face went pale. Yes, sir. The line went silent, and for the first time Keene understood. There would be consequences. Back in the cabin, Danielle didn't know about the call yet, but she felt it. The energy in the air had shifted. Outside, the clouds thinned. Snow-capped peaks emerged in the distance. The Alps, regal, immovable, timeless. Zurich was near. Danielle opened her tablet again, not for the presentation this time, but for a note she'd written years ago, a reminder to herself, a line she'd saved for moments just like this. Don't wait to be given a seat. Bring your own. Then build the table. She smiled softly. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came in the form of documentation, of calm boundaries, of saying, not today. The jet banked gently as it began its descent. Danielle buckled her seatbelt, finishing the last of her water. Her shoulders relaxed, just slightly. She had won this flight. But more importantly, she had made it undeniable. The fight for equity didn't always come with signs or speeches. Sometimes it came in the form of quiet resilience at 38,000 feet, when someone looked you in the eye and dared to doubt your place, and you didn't blink. The descent into Zurich was smooth, the jet gliding effortlessly through crisp alpine air. Below, the snow-covered peaks of the Swiss Alps stretched like ancient guardians watching the sky. The sun had shifted westward, casting golden shadows across the mountain ridges. Danielle watched from her seat near the window, her posture relaxed but her mind alert. She hadn't spoken to Keene since takeoff, and he hadn't dared approach. The tension hadn't vanished. It had merely gone quiet, subdued under the weight of consequence. The landing gear locked into place with a faint clunk. A moment later, the wheels touched down. Clean, efficient. The jet rolled toward the private terminal as if nothing unusual had happened that day. But Danielle knew better. This wasn't just a landing. This was a shift. Marcus, the flight attendant, appeared in the aisle with a composed smile. Welcome to Zurich, Miss Mercer. It's been a pleasure serving you. Danielle looked up at him. Thank you, Marcus. You've been a model of professionalism. Keep that up. You'll go far. His cheeks flushed slightly, pride flashing behind his eyes. Appreciate that, ma'am. Safe travels. She stood and gathered her things. Tablet, phone, carry-on. One last breath before facing what came next. Near the cockpit door, Captain Keene stood rigid, arms behind his back, jaw clenched. Their eyes met as she passed. Danielle stopped. Captain, she said, her voice neutral but firm. I trust this flight has been instructive. Keene gave a shallow nod, avoiding her gaze. Yes, ma'am. Danielle held his eyes for just a moment longer. Then she stepped out into the open air. The wind was brisk, the kind that cleared the senses. On the tarmac, a sleek black sedan waited near the terminal. The driver stood beside it, holding the door open, eyes scanning for her arrival. Danielle descended the steps with practiced grace. The cold didn't bother her, not today. Inside the car, soft leather seats and a bottle of water waited. Danielle sank into the back seat and closed the door with a gentle thud. The vehicle pulled away, gliding through the Zurich airfield, past other jets, terminals, and hangars. The city unfolded before her, a blend of cobblestone charm and glass tower efficiency. Historic buildings lined narrow streets, their facades centuries old, while just beyond, sleek architecture signaled global commerce. This was where legacy and innovation met, and it was where she intended to plant her flag. When the car reached the glass-wrapped conference center, Leonard Mateo was already waiting at the entrance. Sharp suit, relaxed stance, signature crooked smile. He opened the door before the driver could. "There she is," he said, holding out a hand to help her out. Danielle stepped out, eyes bright. Barely made it. Leonard gave her a quick once-over, checking for battle scars. "I heard from Connors. He's taking it seriously. Keen's on borrowed time." Danielle nodded, smoothing her blazer. "Good. This isn't just about me. It's about the next person he tries to block." They walked side by side into the lobby, past polished floors and towering floral arrangements. Event staff gave curt nods as they passed. "You ready for this?" Leonard asked. "Always," she replied. Inside the conference hall, everything was in place. Stage, spotlight, branded visuals, high-level stakeholders already seated. Her company's logo shimmered against a deep navy backdrop. International distributors, luxury brand reps, press, all of them waiting. Danielle stepped into the spotlight like she belonged there. Because she did. Her voice, clear and commanding, guided them through vision, strategy, global impact. She spoke of market expansion, sustainability, innovation. But beneath it all was something deeper. Ownership, presence, defiance turned into leadership. When she finished, the room stood, not out of politeness, out of certainty. Afterward, in the green room, Danielle peeled off her heels and sat with a quiet sigh. Leonard walked in holding 2 champagne flutes. "You crushed it," he said, offering her one. Danielle smiled and clinked glasses. "To clean landings," she said, "and sharper takeoffs." They both drank. Later that night, back in her hotel suite, Danielle stood near the window. Zurich shimmered below, warm lights over ancient bridges, trams rolling through the streets like clockwork. Her carry-on sat open on the chair. Her tablet glowed faintly beside the bed. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message from Leonard. "You handled today with your usual brilliance. Proud of you." "Dinner tomorrow?" Danielle replied. "Thank you, and yes, dinner sounds perfect." She set the phone down and walked barefoot to the window, letting the city lights spill across her face. The day had been a test, and a turning point. Todd Keene hadn't just been a man with poor judgment. He was a gatekeeper of a much larger problem, one that had followed her into boardrooms, terminals, and business dinners for years. But today, she hadn't just walked through that gate. She'd made sure it wouldn't close behind her. She looked out over the rooftops, letting the moment settle in. No celebration, no grand gesture, just a quiet victory, and a promise to herself to keep going, because the work wasn't finished, not even close. Weeks later, a memo circulated through Elite Aviation's internal channels. Subject line, "Policy Update, Staff Conduct and Inclusion Initiative" beneath it. An official statement. As of this month, Captain Todd Keene is no longer employed with Elite Aviation. In light of recent events, all staff, especially those in client-facing roles, will undergo mandatory diversity, inclusion, and bias training, effective immediately. Attached to the memo, an anonymous case summary labeled Flight 407. There were no names, but people inside the company knew, and they talked. Some saw it as long overdue, others as a wake-up call. But one thing was certain, things had changed. Danielle didn't ask for the memo. She didn't seek public validation. But when it reached her inbox, forwarded quietly by an ally inside the company, she read every word, then closed it. Justice didn't always arrive with headlines. Sometimes it moved like water, quiet, steady, reshaping the ground beneath. Back in New York, weeks later, Danielle stood on the roof of her headquarters. The skyline stretched around her, steel and glass, sunset haze over the river. Behind her, Mercer and Company buzzed with growth, new hires, bigger contracts, broader reach. But her thoughts circled back to Zurich, and before that, the lounge, the terminal, the stare that said, "You don't belong here." She smiled to herself, because now there was no doubt. She belonged wherever she chose to be. And if someone tried to say otherwise, they'd learn the hard way. The sky isn't the limit. It's just the starting point.